Shall we proceed?
It's really your call. It is 4 o'clock and you are the vice chair. I can help you with the agenda and keep you moving.
With that kind of power, it's hard to decide what to do here, but could wait a couple of minutes, maybe Jim or Raul, somebody might show up.
Okay, we can wait a couple.
It is recording though.
Especially important since that way Paul won't be if somebody else comes in, you won't be the last person to wander in.
That's right. Just so we're clear, the mics are hot. We are recording, so.
By now, most people know me.
True enough.
Didn't say that.
Well, with that, maybe we should go ahead and start. So I'll call this meeting to order. Can we do the roll call
Chair Thorpe. Vice Chair Griva,
here?
Board Member Rodriguez. Board Member Wood,
Here.
Board Member White.
Here. Okay, let's stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Okay, item D, public comments from the audience regarding items not on the agenda.
I don't see any raised hands.
Consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and may be approved by one action of the agency unless a request for removal for discussion or explanation is received prior to the time agency votes on the motion to adopt. E1, adoption of minutes of March 25th, 2025, Royal GSA meeting.
Move to approve.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. F, agency business. F1, receive Arroyo Groundwater Sustainability Agency's General Manager's Status Report. Presentation or report.
It's just an oral report. There's a few items going on that are, that I know are important to you as board members. I'll try to cover most of them. I think I wanted to run through for the first part of this, the annual report. Can you see that? There we go. What's that? Oh, yes, Mr. Versick. Put it down, okay. I'm going through some technical difficulties myself here, so bear with me. So on your screen there, this is the annual report for the Forebay. Just to give you an idea of the number of wells. And the legend basically says the green dots are agricultural wells and the gray dots are urban, and clearly a lot more green dots than there are gray dots. That's a piece of information we're all aware of. I do want to tell you that there were no undesirable results. But more to the point, there's 37 of those wells that make up the Representative Monitoring System, RMS, for the Forebay. Of the 37, 30 of them were over the measurable objective. That's the line in the sand that we drew for ourselves and said, this is where we want to be. So 30 of them are over that. The other 7 are in between that measurable objective and an undesirable result. So generally speaking, we're in great shape. There was some, better than average rainfall through all of the Salinas Valley. Pumping was down a little bit because it was wet for a longer time. That all results in additional groundwater elevation raises, more groundwater in storage. I think some 54,000 acre feet was added compared to last year. I'm whipping through this report just to get to some of the key graphics for you. Groundwater elevations pretty much follow ground elevations, go up the valley. This one I want to stop at just for a moment. I know it's a bunch of squiggly lines. These are hydrographs. They're showing groundwater elevations at a number of different wells. 4 of them are depicted on the graphic. And what is important is the far right-hand side of the squiggly lines. So we've had a couple of really wet years after a pretty significant drought through most of the 2011 through the 2010s. And you can see the groundwater elevations have all trended upwards. So it does give you a graphic indication that he had a couple of good years here in the Forebay and in the Arroyo Seco Cone management area, and we're sustainable. We're at or above the elevations that they've been for, I don't know, 45 years if we go back to 1980, huh? So it gives you, it gives me some comfort to talk about the sustainability of the Forebay as we head into the next update, right? We're going to go through a 5-year update over the next year and a half or so. And there was some discussion about maybe the groundwater elevations were trending downward because our last drought was pretty severe, prolonged, and it did, as you can see, result in, some elevations that were trending downward. But we've had some pretty good wet years, starting at about 2018, 19. They bounced around, but the last 2 years have been pretty significant and showed, very much a general upswing in the trend. I think the one that's probably easiest to see is the blue line on the bottom of the graph. If you look kind of across it, you could draw a line almost flat. Yeah, there's some that bounce below, but generally the groundwater elevations kind of end and stop about 140 feet, huh? And that's over 45 years. So I think it's, it's good news for you. It's good news for all of us here in the Forebay. There are some water quality issues. We're not quite clear how those are going to be addressed. Nitrates is one of them. There's an ongoing existing program. But in terms of water availability and water use, this graphic is, I've got here shown for you is groundwater elevation changes. And the blue and purple areas are all increases. Even the green is an increase. But throughout the region, we've seen increases in groundwater elevation. So that's the green's actually 0, huh? It's minus a quarter foot to 0. But the point is that pretty much all of them are up. That's good news. This graphic, there's two here actually. On the top, you've got, essentially agricultural groundwater use. And as I mentioned earlier, the last 2 years have been wet. Because they're wet, they kind of proceed into the irrigation season, groundwater pumping is down. And then you can see groundwater storage, it's kind of bounced all over the place as you would expect. But in general, we're at just about 0. So while we had a pretty big deficit and that drought in the teens that I talked about, you can see that cumulative change line dropping pretty low. It dropped again in the late teens. Again, that drought was kind of prolonged and has bounced back up significantly. So those are really good indicators. And I wanted to share that with you. I'll get this report to Ann and she'll get it out to all of you so you have a copy of it. It's been submitted to the Department of Water Resources on the 1st. But that's just one thing that I wanted to share with you all so that we had an opportunity to get that information out to you. Again, it's an indication, I think a strong one, that our groundwater basin is sustainable. Our groundwater elevations, our storage, all those things are good. And, just given that 30 of the 37 representative wells that we're using to characterize the basin are above the objective that we're set for ourselves, indicates that when it rains, we do okay. So I'll pause and ask if there's any questions.
So all in all, pretty positive results on all the measurements.
Very positive. Yeah. Rainfall was about 2 inches above normal. Normal's about 12 to 14 and we were at 16. So yeah, very positive.
Do each of these subbasins have this report?
Each of the subbasins have a similar report they were all submitted to the Salinas Valley Basin GSA this month.
And they're gonna have the same graphs?
I'm sorry?
They're gonna have the same graphs, basically?
They have very much the same graphs for each of the subbasins. If we went into the Upper Valley
Yeah.
report, I did kind of preview that. They're very similar,
That's good.
same sort of story.
Great.
I have a question and kind of leads into what you were just saying. And I should know this answer, but like the pressure zone up north of seawater intrusion, do they show a deficit in groundwater, or is that being replaced by seawater and it doesn't change?
The latter, it's mostly replaced by seawater intrusion into the pressure 180, but there is a deficit in the east side.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, when you look at the groundwater contours for the east side, especially beneath Salinas, there's a pretty large deficit there. It's got and that's one of the hydraulic gradients that's driving seawater intrusion. Okay, the second item, unless you want to go to the public, it's up to you.
It's up to you.
Hey, I'm the only one here.
Well, there's actually people
There's people online.
Oh, my bad.
right now. Well, maybe this might be an opportunity before we get on to your second
I'm not
segment.
seeing any hands, so nobody's raised a hand. So I'll continue.
Okay.
Okay, the second item I want to talk about, it's kind of forward-looking. We're going to be going into as I mentioned, next re-up on our groundwater sustainability plan, GSP. And if you recall, last year I briefed you on some of the efforts to develop a methodology to look at groundwater dependent ecosystems. So part of the update will include looking at groundwater dependent ecosystems in the forebay. And as you would guess, one of them is the Salinas River. The other major one is the Arroyo Seco. And the Arroyo Seco doesn't really fit the definition until we get closer to the Salinas Valley floor and the Salinas Valley River. So as the Arroyo Seco River goes past Greenfield, it starts to turn northwesterly. And somewhere in that arc and beyond, portions of the Arroyo Seco fit the definitions that we've developed for groundwater dependent ecosystems. And those definitions include groundwater elevations 30 feet or higher, in relation, 30 feet of depth or less in relation to the ground level. That's about the length of most of the riparian type vegetation roots. Oak trees can get deeper. And so we would look for those in any kind of watershed where we see some deep incisions in the elevations, indicating you might have a stream or whatever. So we look for those as well. But by and large, the two major water bodies that we'll be looking at relative to groundwater dependent ecosystems are the downriver reach of the Arroyo Seco right before it combines with the Salinas River and then the Salinas River. The Salinas River is, of course, complicated in looking for groundwater dependent ecosystems because the reservoirs have been operated for a number of years and kind of changed the dynamic. It's not really just dependent on naturally occurring unregulated rivers like the Arroyo Seco. So consequently, things like the operation of the reservoirs and the habitat conservation plan that the Water Resource Agency is currently engaged in have a pretty big significant role to play in how those groundwater dependent ecosystems are going to be managed and addressed, because it's not, strictly speaking, straightforward. It's got these extra layers of consideration, not the least of which are steelhead in the case of the Salinas River. So we're going to let the HCP process play out for this update on the Salinas. And we'll be looking primarily at that set of reaches between the confluence of the Salinas River and where we stop seeing vegetation that meets the criteria, little areas where we see the criteria. So we'll be bringing that to the Forebay Implementation Committee and start working on that as part of our general plan update. So I wanted to brief you on that. It's not surprising. I was maybe a little surprised at how far back, or maybe another way to say it is how close the groundwater dependent ecosystems get to our Arroyo Seco cone management area. But it's not surprising that they exist. We know the Arroyo Seco River has got really large transmissivities, or the ground that underlays the Arroyo Seco River. And generally speaking, there's not very much connection between that groundwater that lies beneath and the water in the surface. It just kind of percolates through and finds its way in the sands and gravels make up the groundwater basin. But as we get closer to the Salinas River, we start getting some of those clay soils, things change a little bit. And frankly, there's more water in the system because of the river, the Salinas River. Okay, so that's something we'll keep you informed on. The last thing I want to talk about is last week's Salinas Valley Basin GSA Advisory Committee. Member Wood was there as well, representing our fine community here. And we had a couple of interesting presentations. The first of which had to do with one of the projects that they're looking at, and that would be the Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project, looking primarily at utilizing the Water Resource Agency's 11043 water right permit to take unspoken for water off, unpermitted water is probably a better word, off of the Salinas River, and then putting it in the ground, treating it first, putting it in the ground, and then using it afterwards. One of the struggles that kind of project has to deal with is the wide variation and, frankly, the frequency and variation in amounts, of water, and just trying to capture that water. If you build a plant for the big peak, most of the time, it never gets used. So if you try to hit like a median amount, it's pretty small. And so one of the challenges is in this ASRs, it's really not affordable to build this huge mega plant for a couple of years. So they struck upon these median numbers, and that's really not enough to do ample injection to really stave off seawater intrusion. So we heard a fair amount of discussion from the committee that maybe ASR and the way it was being developed wasn't the right project. And that maybe we need a better idea of how to store some of that water. That's, I think the thread that I heard most of the day was storage. We need more, especially at the north end of the valley. And how do we address communities like Castroville and Salinas in particular in terms of their water supply needs? Which I think, they were good inputs. The other major project that the Salinas Valley Basin GSA has developed thus far, I'll just call it the groundwater extraction and treatment. I think they have another name for it, but they extract brackish water near the coast, treat it, and then deliver that to the urban areas. And that one, because you're essentially putting wells in and are in control of how much water gets extracted, actually looks like it performs better. But its current estimated cost is over $1 billion. So it suggests that there may be other projects that need to be developed. And again, we heard storage of that surface water may be one of them. And I thought the discussion was fairly good. The other area that we got into was as part of the development of a demand management program, the Salinas Valley Basin GSA wanted to kind of develop this problem statement, which conceptually is a great idea, because if you want to build a solution, it would be, I think, very advantageous to be clear about what the problem is you're trying to solve with the building of a project. And so you're kind of mixing the demand management and projects together may have complicated the development of that problem statement. And the development of the problem statement hasn't gone through all of the implementation committee. So there's no forebay piece and there's no Upper Valley piece. But nevertheless, it was presented. People commented on it. I can just say in general, the comments were, we need to simplify this thing and we need more storage. The thread that I heard all day long was, we need more storage in the north end of the valley, and that the current problem statement was maybe a bit too complicated. So I'll pause there and ask Member Wood if he had any other thoughts on that particular contributions.
Related to the problem statement, I just remember thinking there's so much of everything that the GSAs do that kind of is above my head. I looked at the problem statement and said, oh my God, this is exactly what we need. I mean, the level of comprehension, and they were very direct about a number of things. And I think maybe the level of directness probably was putting some people off, but I thought it was a good attempt.
As I said, I was just more or less reiterating what I heard. I do think that they tried and they've identified a number of really important elements that need to be sussed out in such a way, and they can simplify it, but covering the basis, it's a good point. But I think it's important that you guys know that as soon as we go through this process with the forebay committee, I will bring that to you so you'll get it, in its entirety. I think right now it's still in development. It's still going to go back to the advisory committee, so it's going to take a while. But I think it is important to have such a thing. That is, to have a problem statement, to know what it is we're trying to solve. Seawater intrusion is a clear thing that we're trying to solve, but the solution is pretty costly. we don't have quite the same sort of problems in the forebay or upper valley. But, nitrate contamination is an issue that we'll have to deal with over time. Whether it's going to be us or regional board or some other body, that is unclear yet. But I suspect it'll land in our bailiwick eventually. So, Mr. Vice Chair, that concludes my report for today. I thought those were three things that were really important for you all to hear, to be aware of. And I can see that Mr. Versick has his hand up. And Mr. Versick, if it's okay, we go to public
Yeah,
comment?
no, I think that's what I was going to suggest. We'll go to public comments
Great.
next.
Okay. Thank you. This is Tom Versick speaking. I apologize if my audio is off. I was having some technical issues. In any event, in addition to what your general manager has told you, and certainly recognizing the quote problem statement or statements, we'll go through quite a bit more process, including process at the Forebay Committee. This body may at some point want to look at what the current quote valley-wide problem statement says. And just for example, that statement says, and I'm not quoting from it, I don't have it in front of me, but it says, it uses the word all, that the interests in the, all of the interests in the valley rely on groundwater, or words to that effect. I'm quite certain the word all is in there. And my comment at the time and in other meetings previously is to point out that there are people that use the Arroyo Seco and there's Clark Colony just to start with. And so that's some of the things, whether it sounds or looks good or elegant, some of those in some people's view and in mine are just wrong, some of those statements. And hopefully the process at the Upper Valley and Forebay as it goes forward, and then whatever other committees will be able to make things at least accurate. So I am pointing out something that is absolutely within your bailiwick on the Arroyo Seco.
Thank you, Mr. Versick. I agree with you. There was a couple of those comments that I had a little bit of issue with as well. But I wanted to take the appropriate forum in the Forebay Implementation Committee to bring those up. I think it's very hard to make those kinds of really large generalizations if you're not careful with your wording. In addition to Clark Colony, you also have recycled water that's used and surface water that's used, in the 12,000 acres to make up CSIP. So there's, I think it was a good initial cut. It has been shown in other implementation committees in different forms. So I think it's a fair ways off before it's finished. But we'll be participating in the refinement of that.
Any other public comments? Mr. Matos?
Stay on, or am I loud enough?
Well, you might be loud enough, but other people that are
Yeah.
for posterity.
Roger Matos, OSA Vineyards, and the meeting Curtis was describing or referring to. I was an alternate to sit on that committee. And for that was, I guess I became the committee member. So anyway, that problem statement, I had a problem with, to where I'll show up at the next meeting with my attorney in tow and take it point by point. There was stuff there I would not accept in any way, shape, or form. I will be at the meeting on Monday for the Upper Valley and Forebay to share the same. That problem statement stated the whole damn valley. I mean, you read that opening line, the infrastructure's falling apart, we don't have water, we're all over pumping, and nothing recharges to the amount that we pump. That was bogus and wrong. And I made the comment there. Bulletin 52 back in 46 spelled out safe groundwater yields. None of us were here. That was 80 years ago. Almost. So there's no politics in that study. Unless someone's got a new study that says we're over pumping, I'd like to see it. But in that particular, in bulletin 52, it was 241,000 acre feet upper valley and Corvée. They did a 16-year study from 1930 to 1945. Upper valley and Corvée pumped 231, 10,000 less than native natural sustainable yield, which is what the GSA is all about. Not enhanced water, native natural. The upper or the pressure on the east side, their numbers are a little different because it's not the east side boundary has been moved from bulletin 52 to now. But if you just use the good old dividing line at Gonzales, north of Gonzales, 88,000 acre feet was their safe sustainable yield. They pumped 200. That's why you got to see our tree. They did that same, you know, I mean, they were part of the 16-year study from 30 to 45, and that's where the 200,000 comes. So they've known for 95 years that they're over pumping their basin by over 100%. We just did the HBA update. Excuse me. Our average for the last 50 or so years for the Corvée and Upper Valley was 251. 10,000 over native natural. Oops, our bad. But Monterey County Water Resources just published the 23 extraction report in June of 24. So the latest numbers we have, 220, 223. 1,000 acre feet under our native natural sustainable yield. No enhancement with the reservoirs counted, and there's some enhancement from the reservoir releases that have been discussed. For staff not to know those numbers and to present a problem statement that says we're all over pumping the recharge of the basin. I'm sorry, that staff's better than that. That was intentional. That's unacceptable. You go down to the problem statement and they talk about subbasins being a problem to get people to cooperate. We didn't cause those subbasins to be used. I believe that was Sigma that requested it that way. And correct me if I'm wrong. So to have a statute of the law is a problem, what staff does that? Yeah, if I'm looking at that problem statement, I know who wrote it wasn't staff. And again, I will be, you know, the next 2 meetings come Monday, but for the administrative record, that needs to be addressed. There needs to be a discussion with Brett, Sarah, the rest of them. What the hell are they doing? That was unacceptable.
Just for clarification, so I did pull up the problem statement that was presented, and I think addressing a little bit of Mr. Versick's just clarification of in the valley-wide section. I think the line he's talking about, the point was it says groundwater is the primary water source for all users in the Salinas Valley. Okay, and then it goes through a bunch of other valley-wide things. Then it goes through the 180-400 subbasin, the east side, the Monterey subbasin, and the Langley subbasin. And Corvée is not in this, and neither is the Upper Valley. So that's, I mean, thank you, Mr. Matosa. Those are great points. And my comments were, I'm glad to see something here that shows, rather than talking in, you know, beautiful, wonderful terms about, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. There's a lot of things that are right, I'm thinking. There's a lot of things that are wrong. They do need to be corrected. And I think it's a good start, though.
I guess I would say to you as a board, first, Sigma establishes groundwater sustainability agencies that are regulatory organizations. Right? Their job basically is to say no if there's a problem, or is there a way to fix this? Typically they are not, well, the law hasn't set them up, for instance, the way the law sets up the Water Resources Agency, which has all kinds of ancillary powers to buy water, build things, take on debt, you know, and the like. So one of the struggles that we're going to have here is as we develop these projects is who's going to build it? Is there going to be a transition and what project we're going to build? So I think that's a discussion that's going to have to come forward. What the GSAs are really aimed at doing is looking at the resource and saying, is it sustainable the way it's being used or not? Yeah. And in developing this problem statement, I think they've looked at it through that lens. I would agree with Mr. Matoso. I had some issues with the way in which things were phrased as well. I think it's important that we participate and make sure that we get them as right as possible, especially for the 4-bay.
Is there any other comments, public?
I see no other raised hands, Mr. Chairman.
Pretty good. I guess my only comment I have after hearing all this is, thank you, City of Greenfield, for making the Roy Seco, Sustainability Agency happen.
And as long as it rains, we're sustainable. That's my,
Thank you, Curtis.
yep,
So is the meeting adjourned then?
meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.